Don Shelby taught me everything I know about writing news. That's why I'm not a news writer. Don Shelby taught a journalism class when I was in college at St. Thomas, and being the factual man that he is, he informed me that I'd be a better feature writer than a hard news writer because I always wanted to add colorful words and commentary to my news stories, that I didn't like just sticking to the facts. Well, he was right. Perhaps that's why I like doing this show while he remained a news anchor with WCCO for over 32 years. My interview with Don is happening during what will have been his last week at WCCO, and he agreed to spend some of it with me today, and that's a fact that I'm happy to report. Welcome, Don Shelby. What a pleasure.
Great to see you.
Finally, after all these years.
Congratulations on your Emmy.
That's my first comment. Congratulations on your Emmys. You've had many, but why were these special? You just received a couple recently. Why were they so special?
This was the first Emmy that I'd ever won from the Upper Midwest Regional Chapter for Best Anchor.
Can you believe it? Finally.
There are always people who are better than me, and I never did think of myself as a very good anchor.
No way.
No, honest. I never thought of myself as a good anchor. I always thought I was a pretty good reporter.
Yeah.
But, if you have to go up against, if you're comparing yourself to somebody like Dave Moore, and you're working against someone like a Paul Majors or a Ron Majors, then you've seen good anchoring in your life. And so when I look in the mirror, I don't see a very good anchor. I just see a
handsome man.
That's not what I see. I see about a 17-year-old basketball player staring back in the mirror at me. But
we're taping during what is your last week at WCCO. I'm sure 1,000 things are going through your mind, but has it really hit you yet? Has it settled in, the reality?
I'm getting kind of the second wave. About 5 months ago, I started to prepare for what I knew was going to be a pretty steep cliff to fall off of. Because this is 32 years at CCO, but 45 years of
all told.
Just doing news and getting up every day and putting on a suit and going out and covering stories. And so about 5 months ago, I determined it would be smarter to try to grieve that process before it happened. Sort of like being told that somebody in your family is suffering from a dread disease and will probably die in 6 months. You grieve right at that moment. Mm-hmm. And when it finally happens, then it's something that you've come to expect. And so I grieved it in that fashion. Mm-hmm. But now I'm getting the second wave, this doubt that is just crawling all over me that maybe this wasn't the right decision to make, but I expected to have that feeling.
Yeah, it's, tough to let go, of something you've known so dearly for so long, but you also know that there's more ahead.
Oh, I know that, yes.
That this is just a stepping stone to the next chapter of what's going to be a great part of your life.
That was a stepping island. That wasn't a stone. That was
a major step. A major step. One of the things I wanted to talk about was that you suffered a stroke several years ago, but you say that didn't play into this decision to leave. So how are you doing today? I mean, it looks like you're doing great, but what was the decision then?
The decision was based entirely upon my sense of this business and the changing economy. And the truth of the matter is that I have never been, as an anchor, very successful in helping WCCO TV get the coveted younger demo. I have never been very successful at that. And as time has gone by, that demo has become more and more important in terms of how much revenue can be generated, and that's an important thing. It's just not going into the pockets of fat cats.
Right.
This money is being turned back into the station's news department. And so in terms of creating a revenue stream for WCCO TV, I've not been as successful as I would like to have been, and they may do better with younger people.
I beg to differ, but you've been in the business long enough, you know kind of the behind the scenes, what needs to take place. But one of the stories that I remember very well, and I know it's one of your fondest that you worked on, was the Romanian orphanage children. And what did doing that story do to you as a journalist and as a person?
Well, it changed me completely. First of all, it gave me a view of life that I just had not expected existed anywhere. When I walked into the first orphanage, and there were hundreds of thousands of children in orphanages after the fall of the Ceausescu dictatorship, and when I walked into those places and saw these children who had been in cribs, basically unattended, some of them 5 years old, and would only get out, it was like a jail.
Right.
But the benefit of telling that story is sort of a legal test called a but-for test. Would the good that later happened to these children, would it have happened but for the telling of that story? And so more than 1,000 children were adopted by Minnesota families, and that was just Minnesota. And we had a chance to go and revisit some of those kids, grown up now, 24 years old, 23, 22 years old. And in fact, one of the kids who came out after the story was told is now a captain in Afghanistan, and he insists that he is doing that because he's fighting for his country, the United States of America.
Very cool. You know, stories like that is why I like doing what I do here, because you like to feel like you made a little difference, like you're helping people out in some certain ways. What brought you into doing journalism in the first place?
Judy, you know not to ask that question. I got into the business for all the wrong reasons.
Okay.
I was just a big fat show-off. I wanted to be, I sought attention. I was seeking to be famous. And I got in the business because that seemed like the perfect job for me, just to show off all the time and have people see me. And
so it worked out really well.
Well, but somewhere along the line, I turned into a journalist.
Yeah.
And
where was that?
I remember the first story that I did where I just didn't go out and gather facts and string them all together. I was, all rookie reporters cover blood drives. And I was working at a station in Charleston, South Carolina, where the president of the Red Cross Blood Bank was also the general manager. And so we covered every blood drive, no matter where it was. Wherever the bloodmobile went, we covered it. And you have to remember, I was just a dummy. I didn't know anything about anything.
Yeah.
And so I was sitting there talking to a nurse, and I said, is blood different from other blood? Yeah, it is. And they went through the list of blood. I said, is there any kind of like rare blood? And they said, yes, there's an Rh negative that is very, very rare, and it's sorely needed, and we very seldom ever see it. And she said, but matter of fact, the guy just walked in, he has Rh negative blood. The only source I had at that time was at the Medical University of South Carolina, a guy named Joel Sexton, Dr. Joel Sexton, and I called him and said, is there anybody who needs Rh negative blood at the hospital? And they said, yeah, there's a little girl, and we've looked all over the country for our Rh negative, and we can't get it in here for 3 days. And I said, well, there's a guy sitting right here.
Wow.
So we put him in the news cruiser, and we drove him down to the hospital, and they did the transfusion right there, and the little girl survived. And suddenly I realized, there really aren't any dumb questions.
And no accidents either. That
That's
was
right.
meant to happen.
Yeah.
And so you went on from there to produce many great news stories. What are some other of your favorites?
In the most recent past, a year ago, traveling to Basra, Iraq, and covering the work of the citizen soldiers of the 34th Infantry Division, Red Bulls out of Minnesota, and what they were bringing to the people of Iraq. I mean, this wasn't guns and bullets. It wasn't that kind of street fighting. That had passed. They had done that work.
Right.
But now they were helping rebuild their community and rebuild trust with these people. And again, seeing the children going into schools and seeing how they embraced the American soldiers. And it wasn't just American soldiers. They were embracing Minnesotans. And there was a Minnesota Nice involved in that. But that story, and I have to look back on the career and think, a lot of my stories had to do with children. The Operation Smile in Venezuela that we did, and covering the cleft palates and cleft lips, and the doctors from Minnesota who went down to repair that. And that was important to me. I did a lot of investigations on ambulances and the ambulance system, which led. I got an award, and I want to brag here.
Yeah.
I got an award last month from the EMS system as a
Awesome.
pioneer, because the system that we have today for 911 EMS delivery was based on 8 recommendations I made at the end of an investigation showing
Wow.
that the system we had did not work, and so that's fulfilling to know that something was better along those lines. Sexual abuse of children was the first of its kind examination in a serious way of this kind of oddity that back then the children were not believed and the adults were always believed, and the communities and the courts sided with the adults in cases, and so that flipped and new laws were written. So the last count was about 27 laws in the state of Minnesota have been written based on stories that we have done.
I mean, that really has to make you feel good that you know you've made some change and some difference in people's lives, and you've also had a lot of fun along the way. I mean, you're known to be the prankster. I can only imagine what it would be like to work with you on a daily basis. You always have to watch your back or something. But one of the
I hit
other
somebody in the
things.
head with a football the other day.
Oh, fabulous!
In the newsroom, and that was Heather Brown, and she then a week after I hit her in the head with a football announced that she was moving to another city, and people blamed me. But
well, I'm sure
it was
that's
a sponge
exactly,
football. It wasn't
no,
football,
she's gone because of you.
me.
I hope you feel good about yourself.
Yeah.
But one of the things I also
proud.
remember is tuning in David Letterman the night that so many Minnesotans were out there and Kirby Puckett was on, and you came on to do some news bulletin items from time to time through the show. And
fake news bulletins.
Well, no, I don't know. I want to know the true story behind this Carlos Gopher guy who's apparently in your pants. Is he still there?
Well, once he was there, David Letterman put him there because they wrote all of the bits. First of all, they wrote one bit, said, would you do one bit?
Yeah.
And so we did the one bit, Amelia and I. And we sent it back up to them, and they looked at it, and they liked it so much, and Letterman liked it so much, that they sent back down, would you do 4 more?
Oh, awesome.
And so we did them, and each one was crazier than the other.
Yeah.
And Letterman said on the show, he said, no wonder they're number 1. That man is crazy.
And that's true. Do you think of yourself as a little crazy sometimes?
Absolutely.
What's the craziest thing you've ever done
You shouldn't
that you
ask
can
that.
talk about on TV?
I've done some crazy things. I've done some idiotic things. But
What do you shake your head at and say, I can't believe I did that?
well, there have been some very dangerous things that I have done that I've just thought, oh, nothing's going to happen to me.
Yeah.
And then you later find out that it happens to a lot of people. The worst thing was probably covering the Exxon Valdez oil spill, and we were flying from Valdez to Cordova in a float plane, and we had 600 pounds of photo gear, and we were flying toward a mountain, and the float plane got off the deck, and then it splashed back down and got off the deck, and we're heading into a mountain.
You're running out of room.
Yeah, we don't have much time. And so we started taking all of the gear and throwing it into the back on top of the photographer, and finally we just barely made it up.
Oh my gosh, were you like saying your prayers at that point, or just didn't have time to even think about that?
You know me well enough that I was just having the time of my life.
Well, you
I never thought about the danger. I just thought about how much fun it'll be to tell this story.
Yeah. Well, you've done lots of adventurous things, and including singing, which I asked you before we went on if you're going to go on to be a, blues singer or not. Never say never.
If somebody asks, I'm the kind of guy that will, if there is a karaoke machine somewhere, I'm going to sing. If a band and I'm watching them perform wants me to get up and sing, I will sing. But I will probably not start a new blues band anytime soon. That's not.
Well, we'll keep an eye out for that. But in terms of journalism, Would there be different advice that you would give a young journalist today than maybe you gave me back when I was in college? Would you change some of your commentary based on what you know now about the business?
Technologically, I would change, but the basis of the message would not change. Get the facts, get them right, make it fair, make it balanced, and tell a great story. Mm-hmm. The best journalism is housed inside of a great story. And even more so today than ever before. If you look at 48 hours or
right.
even 60 Minutes, the way they go about telling their stories is just not a litany of facts, mm-hmm. but they wrap that in a story that, I think that comes out of people's fascination with soap operas or reading books or delving into fiction novels, that it's much easier to put those facts within the context of a story. Mm-hmm. And when you were a student, I think one of the exercises was to sit down and write the story beginning with once upon a time.
That one I think I did good on.
You did, because I allowed you some of your
Yeah.
purple prose and,
Yes.
and lots of adjectives and adverbs.
Yeah.
And then the next, the next lesson was now write the same thing without once upon a time or any adjectives
Struggle.
or adverbs.
Struggle.
Yeah,
Just
yeah,
a
trouble.
complete struggle. But if you were to have your own news station, you didn't have to worry about the financing and all of that.
Or ratings?
Or yes, or
Okay,
any of that.
all right.
What would it look like? What would our viewers see? What would be important that you would make sure was in that presentation?
In a sentence, the newscast would be one that comforted the afflicted and afflicted the comfortable.
Okay.
We would be giving voice to the voiceless. We would be telling you what needed to be fixed. Mm-hmm. We wouldn't tell you that they needed to be fixed, but we would show you enough that you would say that ought to be fixed, because that's the job of a journalist, is to say, know this and proceed, not do what I say, mm-hmm. but here is a circumstance. Do you like it or do you not like it? Here are people trying to vote in the South in 1963, in Mississippi, African Americans, and they're having dogs sicked on them because they're trying to register to vote. Is that something that's okay with you? If it's not okay with you, then you do with that what you will. And that's what good journalism is. It simply shows you facts, and then you decide at home whether this needs some sort of action or not.
Well, Don, you've been on the news many years. You have a lot of fans out there who've tuned in every night for all of those years. And as hard as it's going to be for you to leave, those folks are going to have their own, sort of grieving going on as well. What do you want to say to your many fans out there who've watched you all these years?
I would say to them, thank you for the opportunity. Thank you for the forbearance you have shown me. You've put up with my errors. You've put up with my mistakes. You've put up with my edginess, and you've welcomed me into your homes. Those of you who watched Channel 4 on a regular basis, welcome me into your homes. And it occurs to me that I'm a guest, and it's at your invitation that I've had any success at all. So I don't claim any credit for these past 32 years. The credit belongs to the people who said, yeah, you can come in for a while and spend a half an hour with us in the evening, and we'll listen. And so I owe everything that I have, everything that I've ever accomplished to those people, and that's a debt of gratitude I can never repay.
Well, I hope that's enough to help them get through what's going to be a very tough season ahead, for many years. And you stepped in to fill some big shoes,
Yes.
And you
never filled them.
Oh no,
No,
you
never did.
filled them. I'm sure you have, Don. No doubt in my mind.
The best compliment I've ever received, Judy, is when someone will email me and say, Dave Moore would be proud of you.
Exactly.
And
Very true.
And I hope that in some way that passes down to Amelia and Frank.
Yeah.
That they do important work in their years ahead. They've got lots of time to do it. And I hope that this business of television news stays healthy enough that they are given the opportunity to tell important stories. Nothing is more fulfilling than being able to give people information upon which they can base an informed opinion and take action accordingly. And I wish for them that good fortune. I've had the best of times.
You have had the best of times, and we've had the best of times watching you. And you're going to go on to do some more great things in the not too distant future, I'm sure. You probably have a lot of tricks up your sleeve.
Well, the people who have retired tell me some good things. They say that every night is Friday night and every day is Saturday. I'm going to look forward to that.
I like that.
And I talked to my dad when he retired, and I said, "How's retirement for you?" And he said, "You know, I don't have anything to do." He said, "I get up in the morning with nothing to do, and by noon I'm 2 hours behind."
Exactly right.
I don't think there's going to be much rest for the wicked.
No,
I think I'm going
and
to be
as
continuing.
you know, Don, I hope you realize that, you know, if you ever want to co-host this show with me, I mean, the chair is always going to be there for you, okay, buddy?
Thank you. I will do it.
Thank you so much for all of your work these years and for being my instructor back in the day.
You've made me awfully proud.
Yeah. Well, I knew, you know, if I didn't pull this one out, it wasn't going to look good for either of us. So thanks for being here and best wishes, and stay in touch.
I will, Judy.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Well,